Hi, everyone. Welcome to TSP Weekly. Today is April the 8th, 2016, and we're here in Communitech. My name is Stephen Campbell. I'm a local tech entrepreneur. With me, as always, is my co-host, Amaris Gerson.
Hi, Stephen.
Hi, Amaris. How are you today?
I'm all right. Friday.
Yeah?
Love Friday.
You made it through last week's April Fool's. Did any pranks pulled on you?
No, I was actually sick, so that
Yeah.
was unfortunate.
Yeah.
I missed everything.
No
Well,
much.
there was brownies in the kitchen, but they were just brownies. That was pretty funny.
Yeah? Very funny.
Yeah.
Joining us today is Andrew Ringer from Alaunus.
Thank you. Yeah, my pleasure to be here.
Did
Hi.
he say that right?
He did, yep.
Wow,
Correct
okay.
pronunciation,
Andrew
which is tough.
Ringer.
No,
Yes.
the company name.
Alaunus. It's a cool name.
Both can be tricky.
It's I did some research on it, and it's a goddess of healing. Is that right?
You got it. And a prophet of the future.
Yes.
Wow.
It's always tricky coming up with names. I think that the overall reason why we chose it was because the .com was available.
Yes.
And it just kind of rhymed. It went well.
That's helpful.
Significant improvement over our previous name.
So
What-
what is Alaunus?
I want to know what the previous name is. That's before we get there.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, the previous name was Professional Performance because quite literally when we started this, we thought that's what people wanted out of a software solution was professional and something that performed well for them. Too literal.
Too
So
obvious.
anyway, we pivoted a little bit, and what we do is essentially work in mobile healthcare.
Oh, neat.
So you might have parents or grandparents that have a nurse come into their home, typically after they're in a hospital visit or after a car collision, to help them out maybe once or twice a week with wound dressings or repairs or whatever it may be. For the most part, we found that those people are dealing with pen and paper, faxing things back and forth, wastes a lot of time, introduces a lot of mistakes, and it's just a really archaic system. So we've designed a platform and a system to be able to automate all of that mobile care. It saves these nurses about an hour of their day, not having to do manual admin and paperwork and faxing things. It improves the quality of patient care as well as it drives better revenue for these organizations that hire nurses and PSWs and therapists to travel remotely.
That's awesome. Is this a pain point that you experienced, or how did you discover that this was something that needed fixing?
It is. It's a fairly niche space that a lot of people aren't super familiar with. My background is in enterprise software for human resources.
Okay.
Previous to this, I was working with a company in downtown Toronto. I was hired as employee officially number 2 to be able to make a vendor management solution. Basically, they would employ contract employees as
Okay.
opposed to regular employees. And there's
Right.
a lot of legal and
It's a lot more
different
paperwork when you're
requirements.
doing that. Yep.
Yeah, so they were doing it manually via timesheets and work orders and invoices, and it was archaic. So I was hired to basically fix that problem and make a software system.
Okay.
At the time, my best friend's mom was a nurse
Oh.
at one of the large home care agencies, and she literally used to come home with a box of paperwork, spend 2 hours every night going through and managing it, and she absolutely hated it. So that was the original inspiration to take some of the solutions that we were applying to Fortune 500s to the healthcare ecosystem. That's kind of where we got started.
That's really neat. So let me help me understand a bit. Do nurses then, are they entrepreneurs? Are they running their own business, or do they work for a larger firm that then they go door to door with, or how's that set up?
Yeah, so there's a little bit of everything in the industry. We typically deal with the mid-size agencies, what we kind of consider the growing home care agencies.
Okay.
So our target market is anybody that has a couple hundred to a couple thousand practitioners that may include
Okay.
personal support workers, nurses, or therapists. Typically, we're dealing with companies that have some back office staff, but they're still using manual processes.
Okay.
So they may have an accounting package, but typically we're the first piece of healthcare software that they're using. And we're also finding that our target market is having end users mostly from insurance companies, private payers, or legal firms, as opposed to government-funded programs.
Okay.
So, as I mentioned, these are just car collision accidents, outpatient from hospital stays, patients that are typically needing a couple days a week worth of help.
Okay.
So it's not that long-term in-home care, is it?
No, so that is definitely a component of it, but
Okay.
that's definitely a smaller
Right.
area of the industry
For now,
for now.
as population ages.
Yep.
I've said we. We're not going to
I'm
get there.
aging at the same time. I think we're aging at the same rate.
Yeah, but you're going to get there first.
That's true. I'm too competitive. That's all it is.
I think it's a problem that everybody can closely relate with.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how big is that industry? You're saying it's a niche market, but how big is that home care piece?
It is a niche when you look at healthcare in general. I think that the U.S. spends in the low trillions. But in our industry specifically, there's about 50,000 of these agencies across Canada and the U.S., and they
Okay.
employ a little bit over 2 million people, including nurses, PSWs, therapists, and just individuals traveling with people's homes.
Is it a similar process when you're looking at Canada versus the U.S.? I mean, we're public healthcare, they are private healthcare, and so I imagine that's got to be fairly different.
It is. So the first thing to kind of address is that we're in Ontario right now and expanding into a couple of the other provinces. We haven't moved into the U.S. We're probably looking at doing that later this year.
Okay.
But there's not a lot of difference between a healthcare provider in downtown Toronto versus downtown New York.
Right.
The process of what our software does, which is probably a good place to start, is it manages patient intake. Once the patients are managed, we provide all of their billing rules.
Okay.
So if an insurance company specifies that you have a contract that's good for $2,000 a month for these specific services, we can put in all of their information. We then do all of their scheduling and rostering. So we have some lean algorithms that say if you have a patient in Mississauga that has dementia and smokes and has pets, we will find of your list of nurses and PSWs the person that is geographically closest, that will make you the most money, that will work under those conditions with that experience. In the actual visits, the nurses and therapists are using their tablets and cell phones to be able to complete their charting.
Right.
And then we spit out invoicing and payroll. So I like to talk about that process because when you talk about different markets, it's the same whether you're a nurse in Toronto versus a nurse in New York or California.
Well, and that is not a private industry, but it's not part of like the hospital stay. It's totally separate from that, so it is triggered by insurance. That makes sense.
It is. It's a very isolated industry,
Yep.
and unfortunately, it's heavily siloed. A lot of the information is not necessarily shared, and that's a significant pain point that we're trying to solve.
Right.
Do you think that's security based? That they're doing that on purpose?
I think it's partially from security and partially from paranoia, as well as partially from a lack of incentive for a lot of other software vendors.
Okay.
A lot of the kind of old guard competitors that we are typically going against in some of the larger industries are focused on really privatizing that data and siloing that data and locking up that data.
Right.
We typically have a far more innovative product, and where we typically compete is in having something that ties all those pieces together. So that yourself as a home care CEO, you don't have to go and purchase a separate electronic health record system, plus a patient management system, plus an invoicing system, plus a human resources information system. We can tie all those dots together. So it's just bringing in that package a little bit more synonymously.
So a Swiss Army knife.
Yes.
They're able to do a whole bunch of stuff.
An ERP for healthcare.
That was kind of like an operating,
Yeah, Swiss Army knife.
It's like, thanks.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd ever want somebody
Operating with a Swiss Army knife, but yeah, well, you never know.
In a pinch.
Survivalist, yeah. So, what's your experience as you go against some of these old school legacy systems or CEOs that have been in the business for so long as a young startup? How do you gain somebody's trust that you can release all your information about who has dementia to your new company?
It's a great question.
How's that go?
Privacy and security is very important. However, I wouldn't say that's a major milestone in closing some of these contracts. I think that the overall value that we provide is a return on investment. Most of these home care agencies are B2B sales. These are not government-run organizations.
Right.
These are private businesses with private CEOs that have revenue concerns, just like any other business that would be around town. So we really try and drive a lot of the return on investment of the increase in business that they can do, the decrease in cost savings, the improvement in their quality of care so they can go out and get larger contracts from insurance companies and legal firms. So we don't typically find a lot of pushback around the security component.
It's really money and saving money. Or
It's
making
about saving
more
money and making money.
Yeah.
To address your second question around how we kind of compete, we find that a lot of our competitors, and I'll just mention that we typically are finding Gold Care, Procure on the large end, or a CellTrack type solution. And we're typically finding that they are really oriented towards larger agencies. Anybody that has a couple thousand is really a good fit. Anybody that has anything less than that really isn't a good fit for any of those companies, and they really can't address their needs. So we're finding that there's a significant gap in the marketplace that we're kind of perfectly suited for. Of course, it's taken us a lot of time to kind of figure out where that perfect space is.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that process a little bit. Of you guys, do you have customers now? Are you guys revenue positive?
We do. We are generating revenue. We always want to be generating a little bit more, but we are.
Congratulations.
Yeah. It's a good milestone to pass.
Absolutely.
So yeah, as far as kind of our traction and overall outlook, we have a couple thousand patients, a couple thousand users, all across Ontario right now, and starting to spread into a couple of the other provinces.
Mm-hmm.
When you're talking users, are you talking those are a couple thousand individual agencies, or that's the nurses that are using it within the agencies?
Yeah, so both, but specifically thousands of individual end users. So
Okay.
the nurses,
Okay.
the therapists.
Yep.
However, we also have accountants, we have HR staff, we have all sorts
Right.
of people that are using this in the back office because it's really their core platform to be able to run their business.
So you're definitely talking about it as a mobile solution. You've got that mobile app, but you do have that back end that is easy to work? Is that off of a website?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. It works just like your banking software, any
Yep.
other SaaS software. So imagine that your managers, your accountants, your HR,
Yep.
your case coordinators are using this on tablets and laptops.
Yep.
And then all of your nurses are using mostly cell phones
Right.
to be able to access this information.
Okay, that's great. So that's the industry. I mean, we don't know that industry, but I don't know how one would start a nursing agency like that. Is that pretty easy? Like, is there more agencies coming up as as time goes on?
So, a couple of answers there. One is that I don't know if there's a lot of growth in the industry as far as new
Right.
businesses, but there are a significant amount of growth in new end patients.
Okay.
There's a lack of, quite frankly, end users to be able to support these, a shortage of nurses, if you will.
Right.
So we've
So we got to be smarter.
we're finding that there's a lot of need for efficiencies, as well as there's a lot of consolidation. A lot of the larger home care agencies have been buying some of the smaller home care agencies, and that's what's been driving a lot of industry growth. However, there's a lot of frictions. A couple months ago, the Auditor General in Ontario actually came out and did a large study around kind of where the efficiencies and inefficiencies are in the industry, and their overall conclusions were that over 40% of home care spend last year in 2015 was spent towards admin. It was, I believe, $2 billion in total, and 40% of that, close to half, was spent on doing the paperwork.
Oh, wow.
So there's been some significant changes. I think that a lot of people have jobs that are kind of on the line because of this.
Yep.
So there's a lot of need for more efficiency.
So as the industry sort of catches up to technology, is there any barrier for entry for other companies that you've sort of passed through, or is there any competition in the space now that you're experiencing?
Yeah, so I think there's always competition in any legitimate market, but I think there are some barriers to entry in being able to provide a comprehensive enough solution in one respect, and two, a secure and private solution in another. It's not everybody that can just pick up and run with a piece of software like this, and I think there's a lot of competition and barriers to entry as well for our individual clients. It's not as easy as opening up a restaurant or a coffee bar to be able to source a couple hundred PSWs and start providing healthcare services.
Yep, that's awesome.
Yep.
You can see today that we're in the Communitech and the Google space. We have painters and people walking by
There's tours
in the
happening behind
background
us.
and tours and stuff.
Always an exciting space. Yes,
Absolutely,
lots
yeah.
of stuff happening, which is good
Yeah.
to see.
So we've talked about what your startup does, but tell us how you started and what actually your business is. So where are you coming in from this? What's your education, or why did you come to this idea?
Yeah, so my background is business and economics at Laurier.
Okay.
And speaking to my journey, a lot of things have changed, and I can kind of channel that in a couple of different stages
Sure.
of our business life cycle. So I think that it all kind of started when I graduated and was looking for something to do.
Yeah.
I was working with the previous company of mine, which was absolutely lovely, but I always knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur and found something.
Right.
So really I started like any other kid, sitting in my pajamas in my parents' basement, banging away and
Awesome.
coding. Yeah, well, you got to start somewhere. And then after that, I think that we got involved in Laurier Launchpad.
Okay.
A lot of mentorship around that program, which was absolutely wonderful. Then moved to the Accelerator Center, and now we're back in the Communitech Hub, involved in their new Rev program, which has been absolutely
That's
awesome.
fantastic. So we've actually talked to a lot of velocity companies, and Launchpad is a little bit different than that. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Launchpad?
Sure. So Launchpad and Velocity have kind of the same idea. Of course,
little
Launchpad
bit
is maybe 1/10 of the scale, as Laurier is 1/10 of the size. However, its main mission is to take graduates as well as undergraduates and be able to grow their businesses. So if you have an idea, it's very difficult to get that idea off the ground,
Yeah.
and they give you the tools and support and mentorship to make that possible.
So what I've heard actually specifically from, I think it's Jason. Is it Jason that runs Launchpad, or is it John?
John Beresford.
Yes.
Yep.
So I talked to him, and he's talked about a little bit more the philosophy behind Launchpad, and that it's a lot of market research, and you're doing market validation. There's a big push for that. Not that Velocity isn't doing that, but that is sort of what sets you guys apart. You're doing a lot more of the business understanding, and a lot of who's in Launchpad is not necessarily the technical people, but it's the business people and also the technical people, but
Yeah.
that bigger focus. that what you found?
It is. It's a good point to raise, and I think it sounds so simple when you start to compare the technical focus in Velocity versus the business focus in Laurier.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, definitely the big difference between the schools, yeah.
Yeah, but what Laurier Launchpad, I think, has tried to do is really adopt the lean methodology.
Right.
So what they don't want is somebody to come up with an idea and sit in their parents' basement and bang away at code all day.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not the best way to found a company.
Yeah.
So they've really tried to pivot and be unique in the space to validate ideas.
Right.
And what that typically means is to de-risk it, to prove that there is an industry there, to prove that you can generate significant revenues before you invest the time and resources.
So how did you find that journey? I mean, that market validation that you did for your company, you had to do a pivot, obviously, at one point? How did that go?
We were by no means perfect. We made a lot of the same mistakes that a lot of other entrepreneurs go through. I shared with you earlier our story as far as how we got involved, and we saw my best friend's mom and her nurse as she went through all of these significant pain points daily. And what we thought originally was that the pain point was in doing the paperwork.
Right.
We were wrong. When we started actually speaking with some of these prospective clients, we found that the pain point was across managing their back office solution.
Okay.
Across that patient intake and billing management and charting and rostering.
So it's larger than one form.
Yeah.
Then.
Yeah, and it's a lot. You had to do a lot of research for that. Obviously, that you're talking to. Like, how many different nurses did you talk to, or how many different agencies did you talk to before you really developed your product?
We talked to dozens. We did maybe 30 to 40 specific company interviews before we really got embarked on this. Of course, it wasn't perfect. We didn't necessarily know what the right questions were,
right.
But we did found that was definitely a contributor to some of our success now.
And did you have any pushback when you were going out to agencies to talk about that? I mean, you're some kid who, hopefully you weren't in your pajamas sitting in your mom's basement, but you were some kid in their eyes. So did you have any pushback as a junior entrepreneur? Not junior, but you know what I mean.
Junior, yeah. I changed my pajamas. They were really nice ones that day. No, I didn't find
with footies in them.
No, I didn't find too much pushback because, quite frankly, a lot of these organizations are run by people that are providing healthcare.
Right.
They're very friendly. They want to support people. They're usually ex-nurses. So there's not a lot of pushback from that perspective. And for the second reason, that there was a lot of need in the industry.
Right.
We spoke with a lot of companies that weren't finding solutions that they need. And yes, even though I was just some hotshot kid with fancy slick back hair and nicer pajamas that day.
You got really nice socks on today, so I feel like that's kind of your normal.
I'm known for fancy socks. I wear them every day. But yeah, they were really curious to see what could be done.
Cool.
And a lot of companies were willing to enter into those conversations.
That's excellent. So tell us about, it's Alaunus, right?
Alaunus, you got it.
Okay. So how big is Alaunus? There's you and who else?
Yeah, so we have a team of about 7 people full-time, including our co-ops right now. So I have a wonderful co-founder from UW, because I definitely don't want to be in charge of any of the programming.
Because that was the technical side. So you're coming at it
from
although you do code, you're coming at it from more the business side.
Yep. I quickly started hiring some people and really quickly learned that I couldn't figure out what they were actually doing, and it was costing me a small fortune. So I had to kind of learn what they were actually doing so I could validate what checks I was writing.
Right.
So I do know how to code relatively well, which I think makes me or gives me kind of an advantage from a CEO perspective.
Yeah.
But behind us we have a really rock star development team. We have some people that are specifically doing the mobile apps, and some others that are doing a lot of the back office and back end administration.
So, are they all developers? Like all 6 other staff members? Are they all developers?
5 of them, and then 1 in marketing. Yeah.
Okay.
So pretty much all developers.
Great.
And are you hiring now? Are you looking to expand? Or what would your sort of 8th, 9th, and 10th employees be? Are there more developers? Are you getting into sales now? Or
Yeah, so a little bit of all the above. First of all, we're always hiring. Always be recruiting, ABR. But yeah, as far as our next roles, we're looking for back-end developers, somebody that can take that and grow out that administrative side. We're going to be hiring for our first full-time sales position, and actually we're about to onboard somebody, which is very exciting.
It is.
And then some of the next roles that we're looking for, customer success, with help with onboarding and helping to roll out and make sure that all of our customers have what they need to make this as successful as possible.
That's great. So as you have sort of 7 people's lives in your hands.
Well, 6. I mean.
6. Well, yourselves. Too.
Oh, myself doesn't count. Yeah, who cares about mine?
So do you have 8
Your mom's
then?
got that. Don't worry.
Is it 7 plus yourself?
No, including myself.
Okay, so how do you go from the bowl of cereal and the jammies in the basement coding to being able to provide for 6 or 7 person team. Did you have some funding at the beginning? Was it just early success? Can you tell us a little bit about the money?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Everybody wants to get down to the dollars and
Sure.
cents sooner or later. So first of all, it's not a straight path to where we've been. It's definitely taken a steep learning curve. I definitely have to admit that I was a naive entrepreneur when I first started out. And what's the saying? That my appetite outweighed my stomach or exceeded my stomach capacity. So we have had a lot of success from some of our clients. They've been very, very supportive, and we've been able to be nearly self-sustainable on that, as well as we took a small investment led by OCE in late 2014.
Okay.
Closed about early 2015.
And those people that aren't in Ontario, perhaps, the OCE is the Ontario Centre for Excellence.
Yes. So Ontario Centres of Excellence is a government organization. However, they do a lot of VC-type investments. They're not a institutional investor by any means, but they kind of masquerade as one using some government funds. So we specifically did a $250,000 program from them in conjunction with another angel that participated, and that's been very helpful in helping to fuel our growth.
And now the program you're in is the REV program, which focuses on revenue,
Yes.
not venture capital. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. Great name.
Before you got into Rev, you were at the AC. Were you part of the Jumpstart program, or were you?
We were. We
Okay.
were AC, just regular program, just an accelerator center client for about a
Right.
year, and then we got involved in their AC Jumpstart as well.
And what can you tell us about that Jumpstart program and how that was successful for you?
Sure. So first of all, it wasn't a big transition from the Accelerator Center
Yeah.
to AC Jumpstart because we were already familiar with the building and the mentorship and the programming and the people. However, as a whole holistic perspective, it's very helpful. I think that the Accelerator Center has their own niche from all the
Yep.
programs around town. And I think they really help take a concept that is somewhat proven and start to turn it into a company.
Okay.
And I think that what Rev does now is take a company and scale it with revenues. The overall mission of Rev is to get a company to a point of sustainability and ultimately achieve $100 million in annual recurring revenue.
Okay.
Not that happens overnight, but I think that that's a really good mission and target to aim for.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So one thing we haven't talked about is when did you actually start? Like, when did this idea? Yes, you were in your mom's basement. You had graduated. When was that?
Yep. So back to sitting in my pajamas.
Yeah.
This
We'll stop
idea.
talking about
Can't get
too.
away from that, really, can we?
Just keep bringing it up.
It's a cute vision in my mind,
Yeah.
really.
We just didn't get a year. I want to know how long that company's been around for.
Yeah, so there's a rough timeline. So approximately 3 years ago,
Okay.
while I was graduating, I started working on this idea while I was still in school.
Right.
I was probably not paying attention in a lot of my classes as much as I should have, and really started working on this while I was sitting in the back corner and banging away
Right,
on my laptop.
right. So about 3 years ago. So
It's been full-time for about 2.5 years.
okay. So then, from classes to you in your mom's basement to then you moved on to that. Where did you end up next?
The
The
we've been all
Accelerator
around.
Center and
Yeah.
then the AC Jumpstart. Now you're in Rev. And how long is Rev?
Rev is 6 months.
So what month or how much more do you have left?
We have 4 months.
Okay.
Yep, 2 in.
Okay. And
Where are you going next?
Yeah. What's the next plan?
Where are we going next? Well, it's yet to be determined. We've been exploring some office space now that we have a
Okay.
team and things are starting to get
Yeah.
real. We're just exploring what's best, so stay
Yeah.
tuned.
Okay.
Awesome.
That's good to know.
As you've come through all these different programs and bumped into some awesome other companies around, do you have anybody that you have a startup crush on?
You're not going to say hashtag this time?
I haven't
Hashtag
hashtagged it
startup
yet.
crust?
I haven't hashtagged
No,
it,
you
so I
just
feel
keep
guilty.
saying hashtag. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. There are a lot of companies and a lot of people that I really look up to. However, I have to give a shout out to the company I was previously working with, Continued Workforce Solutions, CWS.
Okay.
They officially employed me as full-time employee number 2. The CEO was absolutely awesome. When I was graduating from my co-op, I think that I had 3 or 4 job offers. I think it was Pepsi, Open Text, and this little startup called CWS that nobody's heard of. However, the CEO, Jeff Nugent, was absolutely awesome. Just one of these magnificent guys, and I knew I wanted to work with him. So as far as having a crush, I absolutely love the past company that I was working with. And
Do you know how big
it's a
they are
wonderful
now?
experience. Yeah, so...
I mean, you were employee number 2 and you left. So
Yeah, so I think they have a team of maybe a dozen, 15
okay.
now.
So they're still doing okay. That's good.
Yeah, they have multiple offices around the world. They have relatively large contracts with a lot of
With-
Fortune 500s.
wow.
Yep.
That's that sounds cool. Oh, that makes
That is-
sense that you would have a crush on them.
Yeah, no, wonderful company.
So awkward.
Yep.
Why did you start saying startup crush?
I don't know. It just
What
seemed neat.
startup do you think is doing well?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sounds
who do you
better.
have a crush on?
Could be the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really cool. What's been the hardest thing? Give me something like you thought you knew this, and then as you went through the process, you're like, that is not right.
Oh, man.
There's another lesson for me.
There are so many things that I thought were right that I was completely wrong. However, let's talk about one of the most recent ones. I think that where I'm spending a lot of my time is not in the places where I should be spending a lot of my time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that one of the areas that I've really found a challenge is in converting myself from a doer and developer and marketer to an actual CEO.
Okay.
And I need to, as you brought up a couple minutes ago, be mindful that, we have 6 mouths to feed and make sure that I'm doing the correct things and delegating appropriately. So that's something that Rev has been really helping with to make sure that I'm, progressing as a CEO and maturing so that I can accomplish what we need as a business as opposed to what I need as an individual.
Yeah, you still have a to-do list, but it has to be a little more visionary than sort of buried in the code then, I guess. Right?
And the company's no longer Andrew. There's a company around me, which
Right.
is good to see.
Yeah, congratulations.
Do we have any other questions? I feel like we kind of run through our list of
Yeah,
questions.
we're almost out of time. My last question for you would be, do you have sort of any advice to anybody that's out there still in their pajamas, still banging it out?
You brought it back this
I
time.
did. It's been a good
That
common
wasn't me.
thread.
Yep.
So what would you have, some encouragement or some forewarning perhaps?
So my recommendation for those sitting in their parents' basement banging away at code would be to get out and talk to your customers as soon as possible. I think that no business model survives your first customer interview. So I think that's something that L'Oreal Launchpad has done a really great job with, and it's a missing component around town. A lot of people are so focused on the product and then fundraising. You should be focused on solving a product market fit and a market need, and then building a company around that. So my recommendation and my advice to any fellow entrepreneurs out there is get out, talk to as many customers as you can, and get out there.
Yeah.
Get
Good
started.
advice.
That's
Good
awesome.
advice.
Yeah.
So how do people stay in touch with you? How do they watch your story? What's the best way? You've got a website, which we can talk
We do have a
about.
website, easy to get a hold of. I'm available either via our website or via LinkedIn at alaunus.com, ALAUNUS.
ALA.
UNUS.
Okay.
Yeah. Once you get the rhythm of it, it's
Yeah.
easy to get
flows.
down.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then are you on Twitter or?
We're about to be on Twitter. LinkedIn probably is the best way to get a hold of us.
Okay. Great. Great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So who are we talking to next week?
Well, that's it. Next week, we're talking to Antoine from Kindera. So looking forward to that. So that's it for this week of the TSP Weekly, the Tech Startup Podcast. For Stephen Campbell, Amaris Gerson, and our guest this week, Andrew Ringer. Thanks so much for joining us. See you next week.
Thank you so much, guys.